Coming up on Stonation. Who assigns those, by the way?
The FCC.
Okay. So you pass your test and then, like, here's your call sign?
Yep.
If I have a radio and I start messing around, can people find me?
Yes.
How? Is there people out there that try to specialize in trying to, like, hear frequencies from, like, aliens and stuff like that? What would be a good beginner's radio that you would recommend? What do you have in your own vehicle when you travel? What's the setup that you have? Do you need a license to listen?
No.
Can a GMRS radio talk to
No.
ham? One last question before I forget. Can you listen to, like, first responders? Welcome to another episode of Stonation, a production of Park Media. Before I introduce today's guest, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, share, and leave a 5-star review. And if you find this podcast useful in any way and want to pay us the ultimate compliment, head on over to our Patreon page where you can subscribe to be a Classic, Stealth, or Beast Mode subscriber. Welcome back, Stonation, to part 2 of the ham radio episode in where I pick Lewis Thompson's brain, the VP of Austin's Amateur Radio Club. If you haven't seen or heard part 1 yet, you should hit pause and go back and listen to it so you can better understand what we talk about in this episode. Also, I highly suggest you watch the YouTube version of this so you can see the equipment that Lewis brought. So with that said, in part 2, Lewis talks about the equipment needed from beginners all the way up to advanced setups. He also talks about what kind of gear he personally uses, if you can listen to first responder frequencies, if GMRS and ham can communicate together, and even how a group of people try to listen to frequencies in the attempt to discover aliens. And don't forget, part 2 begins during the interruption we had during our recording where we found out the other RV person needing us to move our vehicles is also a ham radio operator. So without further ado, please sit back, relax, and welcome back Lewis Thompson to the Stonation family.
Of it, but we're doing a podcast for another RV group that are interested in amateur radio, but they know nothing about it.
Oh, fantastic!
And I'm vice president of Austin Amateur Radio Club, in charge of technical programs.
Really?
And so I'm promoting amateur radio through their for their organization.
Wow, wonderful! Oh, that's awesome! Yeah,
super.
I'm not super active anymore, but I keep my license active.
Okay, well I use it every day.
Well, I sail a lot, and we're going to retire onto a sailboat, so I'm thinking I need to
backstay antenna, and then of course there's WinLink. If you really get in the middle of nowhere, WinLink radio email.
Yeah.
And I've used it all over the world.
Wow.
And it's anything but amateur.
Yeah.
It is so damn professional, it's unbelievable.
Oh yeah.
See in Japan, middle of nowhere.
Wow.
Received and sent email to my wife every day.
Dang, that's awesome.
It works really good.
Yeah. Well, good.
Good.
My
Nice
name's
to meet
Justin,
you.
by the nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Take care, bud.
Well, isn't that something?
Oh, and also that license plate is free. You know, it looks like a vanity plate, which you pay money for. You don't if it's an amateur radio operator.
Really?
You get it free because the state considers amateur radio operators to be a important asset. So we do not have to pay for that vanity plate.
Nice.
And no one else has that call sign anywhere in the world.
Huh.
That is an absolute. I use it for my email, if you noticed, because no one else can have W5IFQ.
Who assigns those, by the way?
The FCC.
Okay, so you pass your test, and they're like, "Here's your call sign."
Yep.
Okay.
And then you can go out and get a vanity call sign. You pay some money for it, not a lot. That's maybe unique. It could even be your name or something else. It has to be like 3 characters, so it could be initials or something like that.
Okay.
But I just got it in high school, and I felt like that's my name. You know?
Yeah, I like it. That's cool. So, oh shoot, I can't remember what we were talking about before we got.
Oh, well, there's another interesting comment. We were talking about scholarships.
Oh, yeah.
And so, again, we've had even in the schools, the colleges do not have to be in Texas. We sent one student who went to France to get advanced medical training, and we paid for that.
Wow.
And as kind of an interesting aside, her undergraduate, she was at University of Texas, and she was the president of the University of Texas Amateur Radio Club. Her father is still alive, and he is a electrical engineer and a Morse code expert. And so when the children were growing up, they were walking around going da da did it da da, and she is a superb Morse code operator.
Oh, I can imagine.
And so a very good example of an amateur developing, advanced communication skills. But she got a scholarship.
Good for her.
And we continued to pay for her scholarship till she graduated. So
wow.
That's something to attract people in the community.
Yeah, for sure.
One other quick comment was most of a lot of countries in the United States, in the world, have reciprocal licensing. So when I went to Australia on business, I was able to apply for and get an Australian amateur radio license just because I was already an United States amateur radio operator. I call it reciprocal licensing. Canada, most of Europe recognize advanced amateur United States amateur licenses. Really can't get a reciprocal license with a technician class, but as an extra class, I was able to get the highest class of Australian license. Mm-hmm. I was VK6 BQH was my amateur radio call sign in Australia.
Mm. Oh, yeah. So you didn't get to carry yours over to a different country?
They just issued me,
okay.
and interestingly, this was at Perth, Australia, about 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And they had never issued a reciprocal license before in their FCC office in Perth, Australia, which is way out Western Australia. Mm-hmm. And they were fascinated with it. It took a couple of hours, and they were very courteous, but were able to give me my Australian call sign.
That's cool.
So that's another interesting thing that is going on within the world amateur radio community. Mm-hmm. There are international Telegraphy Union, ITU, component of amateur radio. Amateur radio component of the ITU meets every few years to set up the rules and regulations for international amateur radio. Obviously, since amateur radio can talk anywhere in the world, countries have to get together and decide what frequencies, modes are going to be common to maintain integrity around the world. And that goes on every few years, where the frequencies are designated for different zones. There are 3 zones within the world, Zone 1, 2, and 3. We're in Zone 2, and they each have slightly different frequencies and rules, but they actually are very, very common, so that there's no problem with me talking to someone in New Zealand or Germany or the Soviet Union or wherever. A few countries do not allow their amateurs to talk to other countries, and that includes North Korea.
Oh, yeah.
For example.
Not surprising.
Yeah, and but in general, there's a very tight-knit international amateur radio community.
So, have you been able to talk to anyone from Ukraine or even Poland?
I used to. Mm-hmm. But we understand that the Ukrainian amateur radio operators are off the air during the war.
Oh, is that like a law or something?
Probably. I don't know. They may have just decided that they can't promote that at the moment. I have no idea, but we just understand that their amateur radio operators are off the air, whether they were ordered off the air by the Ukrainian Communications Commission or not. I suspect they probably were ordered off the air.
Okay.
Just because of you could direction find on them. They're all worried about maybe information being passed on. I mean, just talking about what you see in the city to someone else somewhere else in the world could provide the Soviet Union, Russia, tactical information about how effective their bombing campaign might be. So you don't want to pass that kind of information on.
Yeah, that
and that
makes
would be a
sense.
reason to shut it down. So I'm just kind of thinking out loud, but I suspect that's what's going on there.
No, that makes sense. You don't want...
I have two friends in Ukraine that designed and built the WedLink modems. You remember the $1,000 modems I was telling you about, and other software. They have designed. They're both PhD electrical engineers.
Wow.
Very smart, very capable, and I just hope that they're safe because I'm very concerned about them. But their technology was just excellent. The Ukrainian community technologically is very good.
Wow. Yeah, I hope they're okay too.
Yeah, I am concerned about them.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Well, not to go down that road, but so I'm curious. What you just said kind of popped a couple questions into my head. So the first one is, like, if I have a radio and I start messing around, can people find me?
Yes.
How?
Well, there's two different. The FCC has a very healthy direction finding capability.
Okay.
And that includes the ability to calculate backwards the bounce off the ionosphere. It's very difficult to do it, but you can do it. And also the amateur radio community, you would immediately be recognized as not fitting in by the way that you operated. And also we have what's called fox hunting. Just for fun, we have an amateur radio operator that'll go out and hide somewhere in a city, and then a small group of amateurs will use direction-finding radios and other techniques to locate them, and it's called fox hunting. There are fox hunting contests. So, and it's just something to do for fun. It requires a lot of skill.
Oh, yeah.
But it can be used and has been used to find intruders in the amateur community.
Is there like a group in the FCC, like a specialized department that does that?
Apparently. I don't know that much, but yes.
Okay.
And people that operate illegally on the amateur radio bands or cause interference. There's a few people that just kind of go berserko and start interfering with other amateur radio operators, thinking that this frequency is mine and you can't operate on it, for example. Those people get arrested.
Really?
They get fined $10,000 per event.
Really?
It's serious. It's serious to invade any other. And of course, the same thing happens if you start transmitting on a police frequency or a fire frequency. When you are interfering in a licensed service, the FCC is going to come and get you.
Dang.
And the fines and the penalties are severe.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Because
good.
you want to interfere with a fire department.
That's not good.
but the amateur community is the same way, and the rules apply across the board.
That's good.
So I would not recommend operating an amateur radio transceiver without a proper license.
So how, I guess in like meters, can they pinpoint the transmission? Because the reason why I ask is, like, if you have, like, if I'm hiking out in the middle of nowhere, and because I have one of those GPS satellite things, like, if that for whatever reason is broken, I can't get through, and I have a ham radio, and they want to, whoever I'm talking to is like, hey, I don't know where I'm at, can you find me? I broke my leg, like, whatever the case is. Like, can they, like, pinpoint you pretty accurately?
Well, it would take some effort. The fox hunting people would have to locate you using some of their equipment. We were able to use special directional antennas to pinpoint from clear across Austin, a location of the Fox in Barton Springs area, for example, within just a few minutes.
Oh, wow.
Several different people did direction finding, but those people would have to be present.
Oh, okay.
Interestingly, you can buy radios like this that have a built-in GPS capability and will actually transmit your position to the repeater and allow you to be located.
Okay.
It's a $600 handheld,
Yeah.
but it has that capability built in.
So, like, do the ranger stations and, I don't know, whatever federal or state authority out there, do they have that in case of emergencies? Like if a licensed hiker goes out?
I'm not aware of it.
Oh,
no,
okay.
No,
All right.
no.
Gotcha.
It's unique to the amateur community.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
There is one interesting thing. I wanted to get the name of it exactly right. Automatic Position Reporting System, APRS, is a nationwide capability that uses a specific frequency, and you plug a GPS basically into your radio, and then as you drive, it automatically tracks your every move. So if you had APRS operating in your vehicle or with a portable radio, you would be tracked continuously within meters, the accuracy of your GPS. It just basically transmits your GPS position
To who?
periodically to repeaters that then repeat the information and then publish it on the internet.
Oh, really? So anyone could see where you're at then?
Correct.
Okay, so it's
Correct.
not...
So it's not, well, there's a good and a bad to this.
So if you're a
see?
bad guy trying to hide, you don't want to do that then.
That's correct. That's right.
Okay.
But yes, the automatic positioning, APRS, is a very interesting tool that's been around for 20 years and developed by a professor at the Naval Academy.
Interesting.
And and it's still being promoted. APRS is also used to transmit individual weather stations. My weather station at home, which is a pretty accurate weather station, periodically was putting the weather information from my site on the APRS network.
Okay.
So very useful.
Yeah.
We use APRS very heavily in bike races. For example, the MS-150. The whoever wishes, but typically the emergency teams that follow the in the motorcycle group that provide emergency care for the MS-150 bikers going from Houston to Austin, they have APRS. And so I have worked with that group, and we could see where every one of our emergency responding vehicles are using the amateur APRS network.
Oh, wow.
And that's before the internet was really very capable. Again, we were doing that 20 years ago.
Yeah. No. That's really cool. I had no idea it had all this capability. Like, I knew you could... Basically, the most I knew is that it would bounce off a repeater and you can, like, talk very long distances, but this is completely blowing my mind. Like, this is a whole... Literally a whole nother world. It's insane. I love it.
It's just... the sky is the limit because you can select whatever frequency, operating mode, power, antennas from, as we say, DC to light. You can talk on very, very low frequencies all the way to microwave frequencies.
That's insane.
And you just pick it's such a large area. Amateur radio is such a huge area. You simply have to pick what you're interested in and then specialize in that. I have picked high-frequency HF long-range communications. That's my specialty in propagation. Other people specialize in the shorter range APRS repeater environment and Echo Link and that capability. So you pick what you are most interested in and go with it.
So this might seem like my next question, since you said that, it's not a joke. Like, I'm pretty serious about it. But is there people out there that try to specialize in trying to, like, hear frequencies from, like, aliens and stuff like that?
Well, that's SETI, SETI.
Okay.
I think there are groups in the amateur community and who are members of SETI. I have been a member of SETI. The frequencies that are going to get through the atmosphere, of course, are much higher than the HF frequencies because the ionosphere blocks lower frequencies, and water molecules and other things in the atmosphere cause certain frequencies to be attenuated. And so there are optimum frequencies. I don't personally know anyone that's set up their own listening station for extra vehicular or extra people, but it's certainly something you could do. I know some amateurs do radio astronomy by building large arrays and receiving. Saturn puts out quite a bit of interesting radio noise, and so does the sun. But I don't know that there's any amateurs that I'm aware of that are just doing what SETI does. Now, of course, SETI for years asked the computer community to run their programs on their computer, download the data, and do data analysis. And I had several friends that did that.
Oh, okay. Did they find anything?
No, they just do a bunch of pre-processing, and then the results are sent back to SETI. It was a way to have this giant computer capability that SETI in general couldn't afford. And so they provided data that then was being analyzed by a large number of the amateur community.
Okay.
I had a good friend who still do, Pete, that has a PhD in astronomy and astrophysics.
Wow.
And so he participated in that. He's also one of my top Morse code operators.
Oh, cool.
He works Morse code at 35 or 40 words per minute. He hears words and sentences, not dits and das. And he is also a victim of polio.
Oh, wow.
And has lost the use of his legs.
Sheesh.
But he's a top-notch Morse code operator, and worked his whole life, and was a useful citizen, and now is retired, and still in the amateur radio community, moving emergency traffic by Morse code across the United States every day.
Wow.
So a very interesting person.
Yeah.
But PhD in astrophysics.
That's crazy.
So pretty smart guy.
Yeah, for sure.
Very capable.
Wow. Okay. So to switch topics a little bit,
Yes.
can we talk about equipment?
Sure.
Okay, so we have a couple handhelds in front of us.
Okay.
I mean, obviously we know what a laptop is. What is this?
Okay, this is the control head for an ICOM 7100. The actual radio is out in a storage bin, out of the way. The radio itself is about that big, plus there's some other components, a power supply, so it takes up almost a suitcase. But that would be inconvenient to have it mounted here, sitting in the floor. My wife would not enjoy having to walk around it every day.
Right.
Instead, everything the radio is doing is controlled by this control head.
And that's wireless.
Well, it's wired. It has
okay.
it has a wire.
Okay, gotcha.
And so it's called a control head. This could be mounted on the dash of your car. It could be mounted in your RV like I am. And then the wire goes out around and plugs into the system.
Okay.
And this radio is about $1,000.
Okay.
But this radio produces covers all the bands through 70 centimeters.
Oh,
it
wow.
goes from here all the way.
Okay, so you can really talk to the other side of the world then.
That's right. It has a place for two different antennas, a special short VHF antenna, plus it has the ability to be able to operate all the long wire antennas and other kinds of antennas that I have, the whip I have on the back of the vehicle.
Okay.
So a very useful, capable radio. VHF, UHF, HF, all built into one radio. About $1,000.
Okay.
Made by ICOM. Very high quality radio.
Is that like a good brand, ICOM?
ICOM, in my opinion, is about one generation ahead of the other Japanese radio manufacturers.
Okay.
But it's a pretty hot and heavy competition.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And it's the companies are going into what's called software-defined radios. So they're starting to build radios where they basically take the radio frequency energy coming out of the antenna, they filter it just a little bit, and they just digitize it at very high rates. And then everything is done, all the processing is done digitally. Until you get to the last step where then you take the digital signal, turn it into an analog signal so that us humans can hear it. If you want to do digital work, then it never gets out of the digital mode. It's called software-defined radios.
Interesting.
And in fact, the next generation of ICOM radios, which I own at home, is a software-defined radio.
Okay.
And it's very good. And it was about $4,000.
Holy cow. These are not cheap.
So if you really want a top-of-the-line big radio, some of them can cost $4,000. Now, this radio, made in China, covers all the VHF and UHF repeater frequencies, etc., is $189.
That's not bad.
And this radio, which has digital D-Star, which is one of those modes where you can talk to another repeater in a special way anywhere in the world. This radio costs $400, and the replacement's about $600.
The replacement? What do you mean?
Well, this has been discontinued.
Oh, so the next model up, the current model.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
The lifetime of a lot of these radios is controlled by the integrated circuit community. At a certain point, the integrated circuit manufacturers will stop making a chip. Happens quite often. It's not known to the general public, but for us electrical engineers, it's a constant nightmare because we have to maintain certain equipment,
Right.
and so we have to buy extra integrated circuits so that we can fix those after the manufacturer stops making the chip. And so in some cases, the radio just is obsolete because they can't repair it. Parts
Gotcha.
aren't available.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
But they also try to upgrade to the next better model so they can sell you a better radio and make money, which is okay with me. It's just, that's competition. But the Japanese make some very, very good radios. There's a couple of American manufacturers that are making good radios and are competitive.
Such as?
Cushcraft. I can't think of the names right off the.
No worries. So, for someone that is just starting off, you learn, you take the class or you study online, you pass the exam. So after that, what would be a good beginner's radio that you would recommend?
I would recommend a Chinese or a Japanese handheld. Doesn't have, and there's much cheaper handhelds from ICOM than this. This is a very fancy radio.
Okay.
And that would let you get into the VHF, UHF community. Unless you're just fascinated with the possibility of long-range HF. And there are some, you're going to spend almost $1,000 to get a radio that will operate high frequency. Then you have to figure out how you're going to build the antenna for it. And that can be a simple wire antenna strung between masts or between a tree and your chimney. Or you can put up a radio tower and put a special Yagi, which looks like a TV horizontal multi-elemented antenna, but is 10 times larger. And those give you real worldwide coverage. And so you can spend huge amounts of money on that kind of equipment, putting up a large tower.
Yeah.
But in to start off with, a radio like this, which will cover all of the repeaters and VHF and UHF plus HF, and then you string up a coax with some long wires, and you can get on the air. I talked to Japan in high school with a radio made by Heathkit as a kit, and I was able to talk to Japan with a wire strung from my father's garage up into the trees. And I could hear the gentleman's dog barking in the background. The connection was so armchair copy good.
Wow.
And so, so it doesn't take a lot of money to be able to, but it does take, $1,000 plus wire from Home Depot, plus some insulators, plus some coaxial cable that you can buy that's not very expensive, and you can build the antennas you need. Again, technology is there in the manuals, not the equipment manuals, but the instruction manuals on amateur radio that you get from companies like ARRL.org.
Oh, okay.
Some of the textbooks on antennas.
So, what do you have in your own vehicle when you travel? What's the setup that you have?
Okay, I have a radio similar to this.
Okay.
And it covers HF, VHF, UHF. And then I have two different antennas. I have a Sharp antenna like this on the left side for VHF, UHF, and that hits repeaters. And then on the right side, I have a whip antenna that has an auto tuner that then goes to the same radio but a different output that allows me to do HF.
Okay, gotcha.
And I have a special limitation on my present truck because I tow fifth wheel, which means that as I make a sharp turn, the whole back of the bed is covered by the front of the fifth wheel RV. So I can't have an antenna on the bumper anywhere on the back. It has to be up against the cab, which is what I have.
Right.
And I think I provided you some pictures of that, a PowerPoint or.
Oh yeah.
Okay, and so on one side of my toolbox is attached this vertical whip that's about 9 feet tall, and I take it off when I'm not using it. And then on the left side is a Sharp or VHF antenna, and that seems to be the best way to operate under those circumstances.
Okay.
The center of the cab or the center of the bed of the truck would be ideal for these antennas, but that's not possible when you're doing fifth wheel towing. If you're towing with a trailer hitch, it would work just fine.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. So for our community, the handheld will work just fine because we can use repeaters and we'd be able to talk in a pretty long, like maybe tri-state distance. It sounds like.
No, you can maybe go a few counties.
Oh, counties. Okay.
Counties.
Okay.
Yeah, counties.
That's not too bad.
So you'd be able to cover your group if you have a local repeater. And there are repeater directories. 8rrl.org sells a repeater directory that's about that thick.
Oh, wow.
About that big. Very convenient. But it'll tell you the frequencies you need.
Gotcha.
A lot of people, when they're traveling, will reprogram their radio using software from several companies so that they'll have the repeaters that they're going to know they're going to encounter while they're driving.
Gotcha.
And so if you want to go farther than that, then you need VHF. But
right.
You need HF. But what I would recommend is if you can, there's two different kinds of radios. There's the handhelds, or we call them HTs, and then there are mobile rigs, which is a radio more like a CB radio that fits under the dash, and it has 50 to 100 watts output, where these have 5.
Okay.
So you have a much more capable radio reaching out farther to repeaters.
Right.
Also, you can go simplex and maybe talk to the end of your group, miles down the road. I can talk simplex from my house most all over Austin.
Really?
Because I run 50 watts.
Okay.
And so having the antenna outside the vehicle, number one, most important. Don't try to operate this inside your metal car, because it'll work sort of.
Yeah.
But we hear people that try to do that and they drop in and out of the repeater.
Yeah.
Just doesn't work well. So just put a mag mount and connect up to the handheld, or put a portable radio. A lot of the portable radios have a control head like this that's very small, and then the rest of the radio is tucked away underneath the seat, in the trunk, someplace else. And so it doesn't take up very much room inside the vehicle, basically a microphone and a little control head. So that would be the best way to get the most capability.
Okay.
And then if you've got the money, buy a radio that'll do both HF and VHF. And then you don't have to put the HF antenna on till later, till you learn more. But you at least have that capability, and you haven't wasted, $300 or $400 on just a VHF portable radio. If that's your ultimate intent. If your ultimate intent is just to be able to get good VHF county-wide capabilities, then buy a good, ICOM or other manufacturers' mobile radio rather than a handheld.
Gotcha. Do you mind? Can you demonstrate and talk on the radio to someone right now?
Well, the antenna is inside the metal building.
Oh, so you're not going to go
and
very far.
I can try to connect to the WinLink station, which is in Georgetown. Normally I would go much farther, but the metals all around us are really affecting. I tried to get somebody on the handheld, and I couldn't even do that within all of this metal. There's too much metal around us.
Okay.
But I was listening to a net earlier that the net control was in Florida, and he was talking all of the United States, and he had a good signal. Just probably purely luck that I was able to get him at all.
Yeah.
And so I needed to have more space around me.
Gotcha. Okay.
Now I can try to see if I can get WinLink to work. So this is the software. It's free, WinLink Express. I'm going to pick a certain mode. Okay, and it's told me that it's connected to both the modem and the radio. It has selected the right frequency.
Okay.
And here are the WinLink stations that I can select from. And I need to tune the radio's antenna by pushing. And it's told me that it's tuned. There's a special tuner on the back of the antenna that adjusts the antenna to the correct impedance for that frequency. And then I'm going to try to call this station. That's a digital signal. I've just connected to it.
So it's just pinging another station?
It's pinging a station in Georgetown.
Okay. And someone will pick up maybe?
No, it's all automatic.
Oh. I mean, is someone going to pick up on the other end?
Eventually. I mean, it doesn't be another. It's not another person. This is all automatic. This is part of the WinLink digital system. I suspect my signal is so weak that it's not happy with it.
Yeah.
And it's just disconnected.
Well, I mean, that's okay, though.
The problem is that we have too much metal around.
Yeah.
This is the system that I've been able to be in the Sea of Japan and send email to my wife.
Yeah.
And I had the same antenna on the back of a container that was our instrument container on the back of a 550-foot long research vessel. Navy research vessel, got permission from the captain to put the antenna on it. He turned out to be an extra class amateur operator also, the captain of the ship. And he said it sort of gruffly to me, he says, Mr. Thompson, I will give you permission to put this antenna on my ship and transmit under one condition.
What's that?
If I can come down and operate your amateur radio station. Because he didn't have an amateur station on the base. He turned out to be a great person.
Oh, yeah.
And I was able to send and receive email. Just I had to know the right frequency. But turns out that this program gives you the stations available, their distance, and whether or not, and it knows what my position is, and I have put in my position in latitude and longitude. So this program goes out and runs a propagation program, estimation program, that tells me the best frequencies to use. And as I scroll down, you'll see you'll see it turns yellow and then red. Those are stations you're probably not going to be able to get. So this is telling me that for the best luck, here are the stations I should attempt to call.
Oh, wow.
And if you're in the middle of nowhere, like in the Sea of Japan, I would put in the latitude and longitude of my position, and then that would estimate what the best frequency to go to Perth, Australia at this time of the day for this sunspot cycle.
Wow. Does all the thinking
knowing the
for
solar
you.
flux index. It's very, very sophisticated.
And this is all free.
That's right. That's a free piece of software.
Wow. That's insane.
That's right. It's very, very good. And it's, as I was telling the gentleman earlier, it's anything but amateur. It's very, very professional.
Yeah.
There's people that make this is their dedicated amateur radio duty. When I was off of the Philippine Islands, east of the Philippines, several hundred miles in real deep ocean water where we were deploying special equipment, acoustic equipment, I was going to an amateur radio operator in India. And this was like for a month. Well, after it was over with, I sent him a nice email and thanked him for the service. And so he sent me an email back and said, yes, this is my station. I've spent lots of time and money on it. My son is a software expert and helps me with the software. I do all the HF radio stuff, but he had dedicated himself to maintaining a WinLink station, which required thousands of dollars of equipment, high-speed internet connection, significant antennas, and that's what he did for the amateur community.
Wow.
And there's amateurs all over the world that put these gateway stations in, these WinLink gateway stations, and serve their community.
Wow. That's fantastic.
It's just a great group, and he gets paid nothing for that.
Wow.
Except for the fun of seeing his station being used. And he said, I get dozens of long-distance sailors coming across the Pacific Ocean, and this is how they talk to me. This is how they use my services.
Wow.
And there's South Africans. Again, I've used Australia, both coasts, up and down the United States coast, Bangkok, Thailand, for my Sea of Japan work. It's all over the world. And so this is just one small but vital amateur radio capability.
Yeah.
And sending email.
Yep. No, I mean, I'm going to be honest, and you probably hear this more often than not, but, for me, just the lay person, it's like, oh, I'm just going to pick up my walkie-talkie and just, talk or whatever, and, But this is, like, completely another world, and I had no idea, and I have so much more, not understanding, thanks to you, but, like, so much more respect and
admiration.
Thank you. See, I'm Asian, so I can say my R's very well. People that listen to this podcast, on frequent, see, I can't say my R's, frequently understand that I have issues with my R's. So, but thank you, admiralty. See, anyways, but I think you get my point. But it's just, I just want to. I guess what I want to say is like thank you for people, in your community, for you. For everything that you guys do, because I was coming back into Austin on Monday, and I heard about the tornado warning, and so I hung out over in Brownswood and let it pass by. But I'm so ignorant to like what you guys bring to the table and how you guys help out the community at large. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
If you had a radio, even if you weren't ham, but you tuned to 146.94 FM repeater, you would have heard all of the community talking about where it's hailing, where it's not, what the wind speeds were. I was reporting what my weather station in Southwest Austin was seeing as far as rain rate, wind speed, wind direction.
Do you need a license to listen?
No,
okay.
Absolutely
just
not.
to transmit.
Just to transmit.
Okay. Can a GMRS radio talk to ham?
No, because that's at 460 megahertz. GMRS radios and the FRS subset are all 460 megahertz, which is dramatically different than 146.
Okay. Do they make a ham radio that does that frequency for GMRS? Basically, do I have to have two different radios?
Yeah, yes, you would. Oh. Because they have different licensing. GMRS and those kinds of radios are licensed commercial, are licensed for that service, designed, built for that service. The amateur radios are licensed and built in a different service, a different FCC service.
Okay, gotcha. All right, that makes
Part
sense.
97.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, because I read on the internet sometimes you can talk, but I don't know, like different forums said different things, and so
it's really they're both FM narrowband modulation, but they're built by different services, by different groups and they're licensed by the FCC differently to perform their task, and trying to talk across groups is difficult. For example, the amateur transceivers can operate on CB frequencies.
Oh, they can?
Yes, but this radio will tune that. After I have made some modifications, I'm allowed to go in and modify this radio so that it will transmit on all frequencies. When it's purchased, it will only transmit on amateur radio frequencies. But I can go in and make a change to the radio so that I can operate on all frequencies. I do that for another group I work with called MARS, Military Auxiliary Radio Service, which is a amateur radio-based service that operates on military frequencies and provides long-range contingency communications for Department of Defense and for Homeland Security. And so we're allowed to modify the radios and transmit on non-amateur radio frequencies.
Gotcha. That's pretty cool.
And interestingly, we're also allowed to do encryption, which is against the law for the FCC.
Yeah,
but it's perfectly allowed in the military community and operate on military frequencies.
Yeah. Well, I think they kind of have to have that, though.
Yeah, we do. And so it's just but it's just another service that we have to be amateur radio qualified before we can do this service, and then we get additional training. So that's something else fun to do within the amateur radio community that's a little different than the average amateur.
Yeah, no, that's a next level skill right there for sure.
Yep.
Well, is there anything else that we left out or you want to talk about?
Well, just everyone remember that. Remember about the scholarships. That Austin Amateur Radio Club is looking for more people to be able to give money to for education.
I'll put that in the show notes. The link for that.
That's right. And again, austinhams.org is our local amateur. A huge amount of information on that website, including repeaters, frequencies, education, scholarships. My solar weather information each month is published in their technical section. We are meeting Zoom every first Tuesday of each evening, first evening of each month.
Can anyone tune into that?
You'll just need to go to the website and ask one of the officers to let you in.
Okay.
And so then the treasurer, who's our Zoom person, will send an invitation a couple of days before that. You do not have to be licensed. In fact, we have a lot of unlicensed people checking in.
Cool.
We just need to do that so we don't get Zoom bombed.
I know,
and
right?
the first time we ran one, and we didn't know what we were doing, and we got Zoom bombed terribly by just some individual who sent a terribly offensive, sexually explicit.
Oh my gosh!
It was ridiculous.
Oh my gosh!
And so we closed it down, started it back up, and so the second month, it was by invitation only. But
smart move.
If you just send me, typically, I'm one of three officers. We'll get a request. I'd like to join you on your next Zoom Tuesday evening, 7 p.m., and I send it to my treasurer, Mark Jenkins, an amateur. He will send an invitation out.
Okay.
And we send 200 and some odd invitations out every month for all the members. And then we will solicit people to join the club and pay their $20 dues, which pays for all these repeaters. And then you're included.
Can people donate to your organization, to your club?
Oh, of course.
Okay. All right. I'll get the details and I'll make sure I put it in the show notes so people know where to donate. Because I'm pretty sure people will feel the same way that I do, very appreciative of not only your time, but your knowledge and your experience. And so you really opened, not only my eyes, but I know the audience that listens to this, you've opened up their eyes as well. And so a lot of people like to at least, say their thanks, and if they want to donate, then I don't want to stop them from doing that.
Sure,
so.
we would appreciate that because the money will be used for maintaining our repeaters.
Yeah.
And then and the funds that we have for our scholarships, we're not allowed by law to touch that. And we're talking millions of dollars.
Wow, that's crazy.
We're not allowed to touch it for anything but scholarships. So all of our operating funds come directly from donations.
Gotcha.
And the important thing to remember about amateur radio, I've talked a lot about a lot of complicated theory, but it all starts with the simplest license, the simplest radio, and just get your feet wet with the simplest of equipment. Study and develop your skills and see where you wish to go with your interests. It may simply be to use the repeaters effectively for convoying and for looking after yourself and other people in the field. You may want to do that at a longer range using high-frequency radio where you can talk across states, across nations. You may want to have radio email eventually. All of that's there. It just takes time and effort to develop that specific area.
Yeah, I agree. One last question before I forget. Can you listen to first responders on ham? like the local police station? If something's going down, can I like just listen to see?
It's the you used to could. The problem now is that the VHF, UHF, police, fire use trunked communications, and it's a very complex system where when one station, let's say one police car is talking to another, and they want to talk to unit 63 and they're 61, when they key up, I want to talk to 63, the trunked system figures out what frequency is open at that moment and then automatically connects the system and the other radio to that other station. So they're not always talking on the same frequencies all the time. There's it's hopping around to make most efficient use of a limited number of channels and frequencies.
Yeah, so it lets them actually talk.
And so it's trunked. It's called trunked. It's very fast, but it simply means that you can't listen on one frequency and hear the police talk or EMS because of the trunked systems. Now, we do have first responder specific frequencies, VHF, that are used for first responders. But for the professionals, they don't. They use the trunked system, but it could fail. Terribly bad. And
like
you can imagine it's controlled by a computer, power, all, a lightning hit can take out the whole system. And invariably our amateur community will then send for example, CTEC, the Austin City Emergency Communications Center, has an amateur station there who's designed to take over and provide emergency communications when their trunk system fails. And we will send amateur operators to each of the fire stations or the police stations, and we will pass information back and forth until they get their repeater, their trunk system working again. And that's happened a couple of times.
Wow.
So I guess it's difficult to monitor the police fire because of the trunked efficiency of that system. There are some special radios that jump around a whole lot and can pick up that information. But I don't really know anything about how well it actually works.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just curious. Okay. Wow. Thank you so much for coming on to Stonation. I've learned so much, and I appreciate your time. And like I said before, I think you're going to open a lot of eyes to the community. So I know you're not a part of this Stonation community, but you are now because you came onto the podcast. But just in general, like, I'll rephrase my question because usually I end all the podcasts with what does it mean for you to be part of the Stonation community. But I'll kind of rephrase it. Sorry, I'm shedding apparently. Sorry. So I'll rephrase the question of what does it mean for you to be able to help the Stonation community with your experience and your knowledge?
I think it's very important to promote amateur radio to any group that has a need for it. And again, I can be reached through Austin Amateur Radio Club. I'm the vice president. There's an email address there. And you can send me an email. I'll be happy to talk to you, work with you. But getting into the amateur community just a little, you'll learn how to use this capability.
Yeah, awesome. Well, again, thanks, Lou. I really appreciate it, and I'm definitely going to start getting into this.
It's an amazing hobby.
It is. It's more than a hobby. I mean, it's like a community service and a hobby all at once. Yeah, it's crazy. I love it. Well, thanks again. I appreciate it. Stonation is a production of Park Media. The executive producer is Younghwa Kim. The audio engineer is
Stephen Grasso.
The marketing director is
Guillaume Golson.
The original music and artist is done by
Jason Walsmith.
The sound designer is
Lorenzo Interiano.
And the webmaster is
Peng Shi.
Without any of these people, this podcast couldn't happen, so a big, huge thank you. And a big, huge thank you to you, the listener. If you like this episode, please don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a 5-star review. This is Young Wah with Stowe Nation, and I can't wait to share the road with you.